Morning, everybody. This is Grant from State of the Spark, and I am so pumped to be here today. I'm pumped to be here today because I am in an altered state, and we're going to talk about acid communism, acid capitalism, what those even are, and how you can use economic movements to improve your state of mind, connect with yourself, and connect with God, to feel joy, to feel connected with joy. How many of you have areas of your life that you're so wound up, so bound up, that you just feel compressed, you feel stuck, you can't break those loops? We're going to talk a little bit about one way that you can totally do this. Now, before any of that, we're going to talk about other news. And before that, that we're going to talk about morning cup of gratitude. If you can't start your morning with gratitude, what? My question. If you can't start your morning with gratitude, what are you even doing? So we're going to start our day with morning gratitude. Tell me what you're grateful for. Tell me in the comments below, because if you want to talk about an altered state of joy, the threshold, the entryway, the doorway to an altered state of joy starts with gratitude. You cannot experience much joy if you can't enter through the doorway of gratitude. Let's talk about gratitude first. I cannot tell you how grateful I am right now. I cannot tell you how grateful I am right now for the awesome relationships I've been building all over. I've been building relationships everywhere, far and wide, and I don't know what's going on, whether it's the pandemic or whether it's our crypto show or whether it was our trip to New York. I can't tell you what it is, but I have become fast friends with a handful of people that fill me up. And guess what? We still have conflicts. This isn't just NRE, new relationship energy. This is us even building things together and navigating this life together and navigating crypto together. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for the relationships in my life right now that are breathing life into me in the middle of conflict, in the middle of challenges with business, in the middle of challenges at home, in the middle of challenges with my fitness, in the middle of challenges with my spirituality. All of these people, nearly all of them, are bringing an immense amount of support, encouragement, hope, energy, effort, enthusiasm, and an amazing array of things that I could not be more grateful for. That's what I'm grateful for today. What are you grateful for today? Put it in the comments. If you can't tap and actually share just a few things of your level of gratitude, what are you even doing? Tell me in the comments below what you are grateful for today. Now, if you know anyone who wrestles with where they're at, they struggle to find altered states of joy. It might be even chasing pseudo states of joy, whether that's procrastinating, watching shows, an inappropriate focus on faith and religion, or religion, not faith. But if you know of anyone who needs encouragement, if you know anyone who needs a new method on how to approach heightened, joyful states, someone who's stuck in their depression loops or stuck in their thought loops, and that just leads to a type of depression, like, subscribe, or share, or tag them in the show today. We're going to be touching on this when it comes to acid capitalism. Yes, can we talk about economics and it help people? 100%. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And, of course, make sure that you check out our other shows. We've got Not Crypto Bros tomorrow afternoon. We might be doing Financial Fridays. We'll see if we can get to that, but we do another show on Fridays with the guys. And I would be remiss if I did not geek out entirely something else I'm radically grateful for. I'm radically grateful for my interview with the billion-dollar marketer, Art Malkov. That's going on at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time today. So I'm super pumped about that. I'm grateful for that. Let's talk about other news. In other news, we actually don't have a bunch of science articles, space articles. We often have that. But right now, we're just going to hit on the markets real quick because I want to get into this lesson. I don't want to drag our feet on this. I want to equip you with this before you get off to work. Real quick, the Dow's at 33,700. Last week, it was at 34,200. It's down a little bit. The S&P 500's at 4,152. Last week, it was at 4,188, down a little bit. The Nasdaq's at 13,308. Last week, it was at 13,318, down barely any. Now, the DeFi markets are down a little bit as well. The Bitcoin's at 27,900. Last week when I reported, it was at 28,500. Ethereum's at 1,854. Last week it was at 1,845, hardly no change at all. Cardano's at 36 cents, so like 0.366 cents. And last week it was at 0.389, down just a peck. And Ripple, XRP, at 43 cents. Last week it was at 46 cents. Hardly any moves in the market at all. So when someone says, you should panic at the markets, or someone says, we're in a bull market or a bear market, you're just going to go, I've got an investment strategy and I'm good. And you do have an investment strategy, don't you? You do have a financial freedom strategy, don't you? You have a time freedom and emotional freedom strategy, don't you? You do have a fitness strategy, don't you? That way, when someone brings up headlines, you can be absolutely immune to that. And if you don't have a strategy, like, subscribe, follow the show, reach out to me directly. I have people text me all the time. Grant, how do I set these goals? Grant, how do I figure out my health and fitness, my healthy, happy relationships? How can I do work I enjoy? How can I fix my spirituality? And for those who don't know, that's what we call the TLE, the Total Life Experience. And we have a framework for that too. If you just need a framework, reach out to us, post in the comments, reach out to us. You can find us at Grant Sparks. I'm right there. Ask and you can get a framework. But I share the markets with you because we're talking about economics today. We're talking about asset capitalism. And we're talking about the effect that economics and you taking your economics to create, yes, bridge that all the way over to altered states of joy. This is 100% possible. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about how that works today and set some context. So those are the TradFi markets, those are the DeFi markets, and I share that with you so that you become, it's too early for the F word, so that you become unchangeable, immovable. If you're familiar with me, maybe check me in the afternoon and I'll give you the un-F-withable word, but it's a little early for that this morning, if you know what I mean. Other quick biz updates are this, and then we'll get right into the lesson, I promise. Other quick biz updates are this. Spark Sites, we're continuing our long transition to expand from websites to being a training company. For those who don't know, State of the Spark started as a training company, and it was a very fulfilling work. And then a lot of our clients said, hey, listen, that's great, but I can't focus on this because I'm focusing on bookkeeping and I'm focusing on websites, and I can't focus on personal development because I got to build this business. And in the middle of that busyness, they actually lost sight. And we actually started serving that need, but we're finding that it's time for us to turn back to the personal development side of business, talking about capitalism and economies and acid communism, and that leading to personal development. Yes, we're bridging that, and yes, small business bridges that as well. So we're going to transition Spark Sites to continue with its services 100%, to continue help people getting massive clarity within their business just by the focal point of the website itself. It causes so much good conversation. What's your history? What are you about? What do you sell? What do you want to be known for? And when they ask these questions actually lead to very healthy personal development questions. We're going to expand those services starting with an IRL event at the end of the quarter. That's the Spark Sites update. The Wonderland Investment Group, if you're a Wonderland investor, we invested money in some cryptocurrency over a year ago, about a year and a half ago. And we just checked in with our investors and we gave them the option. Hey, we're at a loss right now because the market has been down since we started our investments. That's okay. We've been dollar cost averaging. Should we cut our losses and distribute the money? And all of them voted, nah, let's just keep going. And that breathed a lot of life into me that, hey, let's just keep going. People do have a longer term time perspective than I give them credit for. That's the Wonderland Investment Group. And then real quick on real estate. Yes, we canceled the Coco property investment. The market was just looking funny. And guess what? The market is still looking a little funny. And with the Fed rates only raising by a quarter point, but still raising, and with these changes in the credit score rules that you can have an extra point added to your loan if you have a higher credit score, we're waiting to see how some of this plays out over the coming weeks. So we keep looking at deals. We're looking at investment property deals all the time. But for the moment, there are no deals that we're in at the moment. But we know that the long-term play for real estate is where it's at and for building community. That's the Spark Biz updates. And some of that has been economics. So we're going to turn our attention to today's lesson. How can we move from acid communism, and what is it, to acid capitalism, and what is that? And then what are the goals of altered states of joy? Why are people chasing highs? Why are people chasing dopamine? Why are people chasing these things? And how can we give it to them in an easier way, in a more sustainable way, that breaks depression, that lifts them up, that takes them out of their negative story loops, and hopefully builds a stronger them? Let's talk about acid capitalism and altered states of joy. Let's do it. So I came across acid communism this weekend in my studies, and it's a fairly new study, and they contrasted acid communism to acid capitalism. Now, first, real quick, acid communism is this. Acid communism is a communist state or community that uses altered states. What is altered states? Altered states to drive economic movements. Picture Stalin getting its people to march and to chant a certain national anthem, and that lead to their focus on production for the communist state. Picture Nazi Germany having people doing hand gestures and certain rituals in order for them to lose track of who they are, in order to drive economic indicators and global product or national productivity. Now, these are obvious examples from history, but there's been many others not so obvious examples of this from history, but those are the ones most people can probably reach out to and relate to. Picture North Korea. Now, I'm picturing the obvious targets, but there's other not so obvious targets where they use altered states. Now, this demands a question, and we're going to contrast what is acid capitalism then? And how can we learn from acid capitalism to get into our heart center and actually experience more joy? How can we learn from this? Well, first off, you got to know what altered states are. Altered states are anything that helps remove the ego. Now, in altered states done right, you drop the ego to increase your connection to God. Now, I saw this great meme graphic that I shared on Instagram over the weekend, and it showed the word ego, E-G-O, if you can picture it. And it showed E-G-O as ego, and it showed the E slowly dwindling from ego, and the G-O was still there, and it showed the rise of the D in there, G-O-D. So as ego decreases, in theory, in a healthy state, your connectedness to the world, to yourself, to others, and yes, to the divine, to God, increases. Altered states are unforced. Altered states are flow. Altered states help you lose track of Chronos time and get connected with Kairos time. If you don't know the difference between Chronos and Kairos, the Greek myth of Chronos was a titan, even before the gods. And the titan measured time and consumed its children. Think of this poetic metaphor. This poetic metaphor of this god, this deity, this titan that gave birth to its children through time and then consumed its own children. This is actually a beautiful poetic metaphor. We are born into time, yet time is the very thing that will eat us as well. This is how the ancient Greeks wrestled with the understanding of the paradox of birth and death into something so beautiful as life. When you encounter an altered state, you transcend this paradoxical fear, this joy and terror, and this idea of, if I'm going to miss out on something, if I make this choice to take this direction, I'm going to miss out on all these directions. But if I miss out on these directions, or if I choose these directions, I'm going to miss out on all of this. And this constant chase of the limitation of being alive for a very limited time chases us all. You might be in a marriage that's being challenged. And you get to thinking, well, if this is so challenging, what if I just start something new? You might be in a business that's challenging and think, man, I've only got a limited amount of time on this planet. Do I want to waste time fixing this thing? Or do I want to just start something new? You might have an investment strategy and see a meme coin or a shit coin or an easy stock that looks like it's popping off and think, man, I have an investment strategy, but I've only got a limited time. And so there's all this fear and strategy and logic and left brain that's trying to figure things out. But there's no heart center in most of that thinking. If there were, it would be an abundant thought. But it's a limited thought. It's a thought that's anchored in limitation, and that limitation begins and ends with the Titan, Kyra, or Chronos. And we've even named our watches chronology. Our chronographer, our watch, is named after this Titan. We wear it on our wrist. We wear the threat of limitation on our wrist when we think about life as limited. And obviously, we could spin into the abundance conversation, but we're not going to get into that at the moment. This is the limitation, and an altered state allows you to transcend that. You go into a movie theater and you lose track of time for a bit. You go into a good worship session at a church or a synagogue, and you actually transcend this this threat of limitation, this threat that you only have so much time, and you transcend the ego and connect with God and feel joy again, as opposed to the fear and trepidation. Now, states themselves are the total transcendence of self. You've probably experienced this in your mundane life. If, for example, you have kids, I imagine if you had a kid and you watched that kid or that loved one achieve some huge goal, and as they were coming to the finish line, you got so sucked into their own hero's journey, you lost track of yourself and you were pulled into that state of joy. You've probably experienced these altered states in small moments. Erotic love and climax is an altered state. Accomplishing a huge business project that you had worked for months on is an altered state. Sitting in a congregation in total connection with, whether it's in Buddhism in a Sangha or whether it's your congregation in a Pentecostal church, and feeling like you belong. And in that belonging, also feeling connected not only with them, but with God. Altered states. And you've transcended the worries of your week. This is why Sunday service is good for so many people. It is catharsis. This is why Karl Marx said religion is the opiate of the masses, because in Karl Marx's world, he used it to drive economic movements. Acid communism is the ability to use altered states, but not for the pure joy of the individual, but to drive national productivity. I got this from Kiwa. I used 1% of my intelligence to build something through using that methodology you are talking about. Kiwa, I cannot wait to hear more. Please tell us more, unpack this, or DM me. I want to hear more about what you did and how, because an abundant state of mind is the antithesis to that, and we're going to get into this in a second. I had been kidnapped in India once. Now, some of you have heard this story, and I won't actually retell the kidnapping story. But I do want to relate to you a nuance of the other side of this story. After I was kidnapped, you see, I was completely traumatized, and I was afraid to leave my ship and go to India. I was petrified. I was scared. I didn't want to leave the boat. On one of the first few days I was in India for 9 days, and on the first few days I was kidnapped. Again, we'll talk about the kidnapping and the recovery of all of that some other day. It all happened within a single day, and when I made it back to the boat, I finally just had this cathartic cry because it was so frightening and I was so full of adrenaline. And afterwards, I was petrified of leaving the boat because I was so insecure about what was going on in India. I didn't know my way around the language. In China, they loved serving me. In India, I felt like threatened everywhere because I had this traumatic experience. Have you had a traumatic experience that caused you to shrink away from the world? Have you had a traumatic experience that caused you to make yourself smaller? And whether it was one big abuse or whether it was the slow teardown of your psyche over 5 years, 10 years, making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's world in the way you think at least they need you to do? Have you had some sort of impact that made you shrink from the world and not be your best self? You see, altered states are so desirable because they help us escape that logical mind. Kiwa says, that's crazy. It was crazy. I'll tell you the story some other time. I'll definitely tell it to you. And Kiwa, tell me where you're from. I'd love to know kind of your background and where you're at in the world. Altered states help us circumvent these. This is why people chase highs. This is why people smoke pot. This is why people take cocaine. This is why people do peyote. These are why people do Cambo and Bufo and have altered states, because they're trying to break these traumas that they're stuck in. And I understand it. In fact, I don't have anything negative to say about using mushrooms or any way that you have to break states. I don't think you need to be dependent on it. But I can understand that our society, I don't think maliciously, is in a place where we're self-traumatizing all the time and we're shrinking from the world like I did in India. And in order to overcome these traumas, people chase the pseudo, some of the things I've listed, like pseudo-altered states. You know, I used to see a lot of people in the Christian church when I was involved in Pentecostalism. People would come to a revival after a revival with a big, thick 3-ring binder of all the prophecies they've received. And they've received all these prophecies, but that's where it ended. It didn't channel into a catharsis. It didn't channel into joy. They had this moment of joy, but it didn't change who they were. They did have maybe a momentary revelation, but they didn't alchemize that and internalize that to help them be better equipped to face reality. In fact, they left that worship service, encountered reality, thought, this is so traumatizing, I need to chase that next high. I need to find that next dopamine bump. I need to find that next temporary pseudo state of joy. If you find yourself binging rom-coms, you know what? Maybe you need a break. Maybe you know how to encounter reality and grind. But if every single night to deal with the monotony or the challenge of being alive, you have to put on a rom-com to feel loved, to feel affection, that's a pseudo-altered state. If you have to put on the next thriller to feel like you're living an adventurous life, and you have to do this multiple nights of the week, I'm here to tell you, sadly, that's a pseudo state of joy. And it's going to fade as soon as you turn that off. And even with these, they are a mimic of the real thing. You're brushing against these feelings, but you're not even getting on the other side of these feelings in a sustainable way so that you can actually change your entire being, upgrade your impression of yourself, upgrade your self-concept, upgrade your self-confidence, upgrade your ability to encounter reality with joy going into it. Instead of being reactive, being proactive. You just stepped inside the theater for a moment and allowed yourself to borrow someone else's romance or allowed yourself to borrow someone else's boldness. There's a safety net too, because when you actually feel the real joy that you're chasing, it's highly vulnerable. And that gets scary because when you're vulnerable and you step back out into the real world and encounter the challenges of the grind, the challenges of the mundane, the challenges of everyone operating in a traumatized, self-protecting way, it can wound you again. It can challenge you again. And if you didn't go deep, if your roots didn't go deep in your temporary pseudo-altered state of joy, if your roots didn't go deep and you get hit again, it can rock you even further. Kiwa says it's important to learn about yourself as much as possible because nobody spends more time with you than your own presence. I totally agree with that. We also see this. We see this in worship. We see this in people who are overly religious. We see this in people who binge shows. We see this people who self-medicate. We see this in thrill seekers. Now, you might look at thrill seekers on Instagram and go, look, they've got their life together. I'm here to tell you most of them are chasing a pseudo-altered state of joy. Because for the 2 minutes that they're parachuting out of a plane, that can be interesting. That can be fun. But if people are doing this over and over again as a form of escape, they're chasing a pseudo state of joy. I like it because it's fun. You might. But do you know how to sit with yourself? So my question to you is this. How do you chase the real? And my answer is this. You chase the real. You actually cultivate over long periods of sustained joy by first and foremost encountering the real, full frontal, full on, by going through the pain that you've been avoiding and by alchemizing it so that it changes your very makeup, your psychological makeup, your spiritual makeup, your physiological makeup, your neurophysiological connection, your mind-body connection, by going through it, encountering it, taking it full on the chin, and knowing how to alchemize that. So a few quick principles is this. I mentioned what is acid communism. Acid communism is when a state or a municipality or an authority of some kind uses and manipulates altered states to drive productivity, to drive economic indicators. Now, acid capitalism does something different. Acid capitalism flips this on its head and says, no, we're going to use what's going on in the market and we're going to leverage that to help people create altered states and hopefully altered states of joy. What? Well, if you recall, economics is not a hard science. Economics is a social science. I just sat with a broker dealer yesterday who was telling me about his investment strategies, and he said, "Oh, we have all the science in the world, and we're going to have AI soon to tell us what's going on in the markets. But you have to remember, Graham, we won't be able to actually turn over market management to the AI because markets are sentiment more than science. The marketplace is the aggregate emotional response that the public is having to its inputs. The market is first and foremost ooey gooey human meat suits. And acid capitalism simply owns that and says, well, people are going to feel high and people are going to feel low. And if we can transcend those feelings, when people feel high, help guide them through that high into self-leadership and altered states of more sustained joy and improving them. If they're feeling low, guide them as we should as Sherpas into feeling better about themselves and strategizing and alchemizing that so that it makes them more resilient, basically using the markets to improve altered states of joy and consciousness. That's acid capitalism, inverse from acid communism, which is manipulating these things to get people to produce more. Acid capitalism says, listen, the markets are going to do what they're going to do. People are going to manipulate. Let's use that to help people feel better. How do you do that? I mentioned a full frontal encounter with life and synthesizing, and I want to give you two quick examples. One, I went on a 14-month journey to change my fitness. A friend, Jamie Clemens, took a photo of me while we were in Costa Rica, and I was appalled at the state of my health and fitness at that point. I had focused on my business and focused on serving others and focused on serving my household and focused on serving my friends and focused on serving anyone I came in contact with. But I very rarely focused. I was losing track of focusing on my internal health, my mind, my heart, my spirit, my relationships. And as such, my physical health went to pot. I made a change, 14 months of total grind. Now, let me tell you something. When I say grind, I mean this. You think I'm talking about lifting weights. I am. I had to start getting up at 3:30 in the morning. That means I had to start getting ready for bed at 7. That creates tensions in your household. Unintentional tensions, no one's being negative. But when you change your schedule and change your life around something, people start to question their value in your life. Does this person not love me anymore? Are they angry with me? Is this person not here to serve me? My friends, I had to cancel. I had a standing coffee appointment with a friend every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. for over 4 years, and I had to cancel it for this goal. That's the grind. It's the unseen things, the sacrifices that no one sees. The demands of my business, I should be working 10, 12-hour days to take my business to the next level, but I've got to commit to certain things in the afternoon for my health and fitness. I've got to eat so many times throughout the day for my fitness, and I am losing hours each day, and no one's here to help me with that. I have to do that myself. And as my fitness started getting better, I started getting a lot of attention from other people. I had a lot of more people start hitting on me and asking for attention and asking for my time. And that's very appealing. At this stage in life, anytime someone asks for that attention, you want to give it, but you got to be careful with it. So I actually seem like an aloof person where I'm ignoring DMs and ignoring calls and ignoring messages for a variety of reasons, but also because I'm working on this goal. You miss out on a lot, and these are sacrifices. I've missed out on trips. I've been invited to a variety of conferences that I haven't yet gone to. I will this year, but not last time, in a variety of trips and a variety of adventures, and I had to say no and continue to seem like a fuddy-duddy because I have a goal. These are the psychological pieces of the grind that no one wants to hear about. And one morning, 14 months later, at 5:45 in the morning, I did my final leg press of a goal that should have only taken me 3 months. But the resistances, the challenges, illness, people demanding my attention, trips and where I had to live in another part of the country for a few months, all of these things continue to impede me and get in the way, but I persisted, and I was so proud of that single leg press. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. I did a single leg press and stood up in all of those 14 months of grind and eating right. And nobody was there to cheer. And I suddenly felt both at once. The hardship collapsed inside of me. And then the hardship and then the joy of doing this alone for so long. and accomplishing that final rep. I wept. And my other gym people, God bless them, they understood. Because if you are at the gym from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. every single morning, those other people who are there are committed to a goal as well. And there was only about 3 people in the gym. At first, they were like, what's going on with him? And then they remembered, oh, I didn't get any cheers. But when you get that nod from someone across the gym who said, I see you. It's everything. It's everything. That altered state of joy came because I encountered the real. I encountered how fat I had gotten. I encountered how overweight I was. I encountered how my self-concept was in the toilet and I didn't like being seen without a shirt on. My entire self-perception had gotten so negative and I could just continue to skirt around it or encounter it for 14 months straight, and I'm still on that journey. That's example 1. Example 2 is this. I was kidnapped in India. I told you the story earlier. Go back to the earlier part of the video. But I was locked in my cabin. I refused to step into India, but I was torn because I was in a country I had been wanting to visit for over a decade. I had thought about India and daydreamed about India, but I had this encounter of being kidnapped, and I just hid in my cabin for a whole 2 days. And I finally challenged myself, scared out of my mind, still traumatized from this. I thought they're going to rob me, they're going to steal me, they're ungrateful, they're mean, and I found myself developing this bitterness that I did not want. I don't want to develop bitterness. That's not the way to learn how to have a continuous state of joy. Kiwa asked the question that matters. How do you maintain a peaceful mind with so much noise going on around you? We're going to talk. I'm going to answer that in just a quick second, Kiwa. This is a fantastic question. I'm going to answer this in just a quick second. So I was locked in this cabin full of fear, petrified. And I realized I had to do something. I did not want to spend the remainder of my 9 days locked away on an American boat with Americans because I wanted to play it safe. And I was cultivating a heart of bitterness towards the Indian people I had encountered. I could not let myself do that. I was absolutely scared. I had all the anxiety. I had all the physiological symptoms of trauma. And I told my friends, hey, I got to get off the boat. I was in tears. I was afraid. I got to get off the boat. I'm going to live in fear. And I can't let this be my story. I can't let this be my story. And I actually worked myself up into being more concerned that fear was going to be my story than overcoming fear. I had my friends, I called these people together who I was traveling with. I said, go out with me. And they went out with me. And we slowly walked down the gangplank and my heart rate was going up. And then we slowly left customs and my heart rate was going up. And I saw a bunch of kids, and immediately I took all the cash in Indian rupees I had, which is the Indian money, Indian rupees, and I started giving them away. And they started laughing, and of course there was a bigger crowd of kids, and I just started giving money away. And then I started following them to their village and hearing their stories and talking to them, and I spent the next few hours learning about them and watching my fear absolutely decline and my generalizations about these people go away, and my bitterness was nowhere to be found. And I wept because I took what was the grind. I took what was turning me into a stiff, cold person, a person of fear, a person who was shrinking from the world, a person who was making themselves smaller, and I turned it into joy. I alchemized it by full encountering the thing I was afraid of, even if it killed me. And that's the thing. You have to be willing to encounter the thing, even if it will kill you. You've got to have the tough conversation with the spouse, even if it will kill you. You've got to have the difficult conversations with your staff. You've got to have the tough conversations with that client. These are the entry points to altered states, not the speed bump. The gateway to joy and sustained joy is a full frontal encounter with the thing that is bothering you, not to shrink from it. So here's a few quick steps, and Kiwa, I hope to slightly answer your question right here on this because it is so important that you are equipped. And listen, I say from the heart of kindness. I say from the heart of kindness, but also I hope my heart of strength to imbue in you, and I hope it's divine masculine. I hope it's not toxic, but I pray that you are strong enough to fully encounter the thing you're running from, because on the other side is your ability to sustain joy. That's why I'm so passionate about you fully encountering life and not avoiding it. 5 quick steps, and the acronym here is EFOAM, and I'll give it to you in a quick second right here. I'm going to put it in the comments so you have it. The acronym is EFOAM, and it's my framework for how to actually encounter more joy. Number 1, fully engage. Fully engage with the conflict in your life. Quit self-medicating. God, life is so mundane. Then your spirit is calling out to you. Your deepest self-perception, your deepest self-concept, your conscience is trying to call you out for more. So if you're watching shows and medicating on food and skimming your feeds and avoiding the conversation either with yourself or with God or with your coworkers or with your employer, but you are avoiding a conversation, and it starts with you sitting. Number 1, fully engage with the conflict in your life. Gird yourself and stand up and stare at it in the eyes. Quit self-medicating. Number 2, if number 1 is fully engage, number 2 is fully feel. Feel the thing you are trying not to feel. I'm afraid I'm going to be sad. Fully feel it and then turn it up. If you are going to feel sorrow, go feel that sorrow. That's the joy of living. If you're afraid of feeling fear, go feel that fear. If you're afraid of stepping on a stage because you're petrified, then go step on that stage. Step on that stage when there's nobody there. Then step on the stage when there's 1 person there. Then step on the stage when there's 10 people there. Then step on the stage when there's 100 people there. Your message has been well received, and I will take and apply to my life. Awesome, Grant Kiwa. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day. I hope to hear more of your stories soon. So number 2, fully feel the thing you're trying to feel. Number 3, fully own. Own your part in creating the misery you're avoiding. Own your part in creating the tension or the sorrow or the frustrations that you're procrastinating or skimming the feeds for or avoiding. Own it. I had to own the fact that I had made myself overweight. I had to own the fact that psychologically I am starting to shrink into a tiny little box to match other people in my life. I have to own that that's me doing that to me. It might be the world. If you think there's a Satan, it might be Satan. If you think it's oppressive other people, it might be other people, but you have a gate in your ears that you could listen or not. And somehow we slowly listen over time. Number 3, you have to fully own your responsibility. But that means you own your ability to respond. You own your ability to change that circumstance. You cannot own the fact that you can change the circumstance, that you have the ability to respond, until you own the fact that you are responsible for how you got there. Now, someone might have abused you. I'm sorry for that. Someone might have tempted you. I'm sorry that. The divine evil in the world might be pulling you away. Whatever that might be, I'm sorry about that. And I'm not trivializing it. But you are the fulcrum of your success in your life. You are. You are the rock on which all of these things leverage themselves against. So if you can, number 3, fully own your responsibility in creating your life, your ability to respond by making a new decision, and then fully own that this is a part of my hero story. This is a part of my heroine story. If you can, number 3, fully own that, you are positioned for the next one. And this is the power. Fully alchemize this thing. Ask yourself, fully alchemize. Alchemy is when you take lead and make it into gold. The alchemy of the spirit is when you take negative circumstances, or in the case of acid capitalism, negative market moves, and you channel it to make you better. Let me tell you something about acid capitalism. In 2008, I lost everything again. I was living in my car in the 2008 real estate and economic crisis, living in my car again for the second time as a grown-ass adult. That was an economic move against me. And boy, howdy, if I did not choose to alchemize that. It took me a year to turn that into gainful employment. But I came out of the 2008, 2009, 2010 crisis with the best version of myself I had ever been. I launched State of the Spark in that time. That's acid capitalism. Number 4, if you can, number 3, fully own your role and own that it's a part of your story, you can, number 4, now be positioned to fully alchemize that thing. And this is how you alchemize something. You ask a question. And it's not a question to yourself. I wonder what I'm going to do here. That's the wrong question. You need to go to your deepest self, the self that's not even you. Something so deep that the only word we have for it is spirit or God. And you need to ask them, what do you have for me here? You cannot alchemize this thing. You know the saying from Einstein, you can't solve a problem at the same level of thinking you had when you discovered the problem. This is the same thing. You need a little God in your life. And by God, I mean something transcendent. I'm not being prescriptive about your faith. We could talk about theology some other day. But there's something deep inside of you, whether it's global consciousness, whether it's the divine one, whether it's the spirit, you have permission to talk to this thing no matter what you call it. And you can say to them, what do you have for me? What lessons do I have to learn from you here? Use it in the first person singular. Use it. What do you have for me? How can this shape me to be better? What intentions do you have for me, divine one, to make this better? How can I use this to connect deeper with you? How can I use this to connect deeper with myself? How can I use this to connect deeper with reality? Sit with this thing. Kiwa says, that's deep right there. You're welcome, Kiwa. Share with a friend, please. It would do me an honor. Have a personal conversation, first person with God. This is how you alchemize. People miss this point. They might sit and meditate and be like, oh, I'm going to make this better. But they don't let this go to their bone marrow. Go to your bone marrow with this question. How can I be stronger here? And I'll tell you what, Grant, how will I know I've connected? You sit and ask questions of this other. Capital O, other. Who is the other? Have a conversation with the other and sit there until you feel this one thing. How do you know you've connected with the deepest part of yourself, with God or spirit or deepest self? How do you know? You will be overwhelmed. You'll be driven to tears with joy. You'll be driven to tears with goodness and appreciation, and not bitterness, but empathy. You will go to your deepest self and connect with the divine in a way that you can't imagine, where you will be overwhelmed with joy for yourself, for those you're in conflict with, for the entire world around you. That's how you know. And you don't come out of that place until you do. That's how you alchemize. And if you can, number 4, fully alchemize, then you can do number 5. Take massive action. Take action. Act on what you need to do. Now you encounter the conflict in your life from that joyful place, from that empathetic place, from that holistically healed place. That only happens in the sitting, man. It only happens in that quiet spot. And in that place, dance, celebrate. I don't care if it's with your enemy. When it says turn the other cheek on your enemy, you can only do that from the alchemy place. That altered state of joy that comes with sitting with yourself and encountering yourself. That only happens. And then you are only from that place strong enough, because you're not strong overpowering others. Your source comes from another place, and that source is more powerful than any conflict you could face. And it's good, and it's fun, and it's joyful, because it comes from deep inside. And channeling that, you then take action, then talk to your coworkers over Zoom, then talk to your spouse about what the next phase of your relationship should be, then talk up to your work and quit, but quit from a place of joy, not bitterness. Then go sell your house, not because you're running from a city, but because you're running to something greater inside of yourself. Every other massive action comes from the left brain, what we know as the left brain. It's not really the left brain, but this logical place, and we're not really sure what it's going to do. I heard it said, poetic language brings together, associates ideas one with another. Factual language, left brain language, logical language dissociates. It dissociates with others, and a continuous state of joy and empowerment does not come from dissociation. It comes from a full association with being alive. Number one, fully engage with reality, accept it and counter it. Number two, fully feel the feelings, good, bad, and otherwise, because there is joy, and even fully feeling the sorrow because you know you're viscerally alive. Number three, fully own your responsibility, your ability to respond, and the fact that it's part of your story. Number four, fully alchemize. Sit until you connect with the deepest sense of abundance and optimism and joy and positivity. And number five, only then do you take massive action. If we can do this process with capitalism, with our economic system and asset capitalism, if they know how to do this, how to take market moves, things that are going on outside of ourselves and channel it into an altered states of positive joy, then I think if we can do this with markets, I think you can do this with the challenges you're facing today. I want you to run with this today and change your life. I want you to sit with this and change your life. But why are we talking about this? Why am I talking about asset capitalism? Why am I talking about altered states of joy? Because the world needs your voice. The world needs your highest stated self. The world needs you at your best. You need you at your best. You deserve it, and we were made for this. So I want you to do this today, but more than anything, I want you to remember the mission. Igniting lives of explosive significance, starting with your own. Have a great day.